Are we ready? Okay. We're winding up a series on how to be successful as a person, how to be successful in business, how to be successful in relationships. This whole message is about success, and hopefully you've enjoyed it to this point. We're on point number 8, and I'm not going to rehash the first 7 today. And this is really where to me the rubber really starts to meet the road. How many of you guys have ever run into hard times before? And I'm not going to rehash everything we talked about 2 weeks ago, but Job certainly was a person that knew about hard times. And, actually, God uses difficult situations. He doesn't necessarily cause them. We have to understand that there are a lot of, if you think of life as being a play, there are a lot of actors in that play. There are God who has a will for our lives. There's God's enemy, Satan, who has a will for our lives. But how many of you know there's just selfish people too? That this world has been, it's been contaminated by sin. How many of you guys have ever hurt yourself before? How many of you have ever hurt someone else before? Okay, so we live in a sinful world, and wherever there is sin, people will continue to make wrong choices with their free will. And unfortunately, sometimes those choices involve abuse and neglect and some horrible, horrible things that God does not will and God does not cause. If God were to take away free will, we could say in one sense the world would be a better place, but in another sense we'd all be robots. And we wouldn't have any choices. We just have to do whatever He said. And so He gave us free will, and if we use it irresponsibly, the consequences are bad things happen to good people. And unfortunately, that's the world system that we live in. But the good news is that God promises that He can take any evil, and if we will give it back to Him, He can use it in a way that will ultimately benefit us and make us more suited to what He wants to do through our lives. And so that's the encouraging thing, is that where people have been hurt the most, the Bible says it this way. It says, where sin is abound, grace much more abounds. Really what that means is the people that have been hurt the most actually are the people whose God's heart is most sensitive to. And the people that God will reply to the most quickly and the most powerfully when they cry out to Him. So what makes this whole thing fair, if you will, is Christ. And that His heart is with hurting and broken people. And so when we give things back to Him, amazing things can happen. And it's the Bible talks about when a child is born, and you women can relate to this much better than I can, but when a child is born, there's great anguish, great pain, if you will. Even suffering is involved in childbirth. But afterwards, there's a joy that is so great that it actually overshadows the pain. Is that true?
I didn't feel it.
Well, I did. As I was in there stuffing my face full of cake and cookies, I felt all kinds of pain. But I think it's the same way. I think that nobody, there's some things that people go through that you wouldn't, I personally wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. There are just some things that are terrible in life. But when those things are submitted to God, they can become such a great part of who we are that in a sense you wouldn't trade them away because they've shaped and molded you into the person that you become. And I know that's true of me. I know the things that have been the most painful in my life are the things that have made me who I am. And so yay God on that account. And Job was somebody who certainly understood that. I mean, I don't think any of us have had a day like Job's, where in one day he lost his property and his family and his physical health, all in the same day. Sitting on an ash heap, scraping his boils with pottery, broken pottery, sitting in ashes. That is just a nasty picture. And then his three friends come up and basically start telling him that all this stuff is his fault. If he would have lived better, then he wouldn't be going through this stuff. Anybody ever have any friends like that? So Job had a really hard day, and he drew several conclusions for that. One of the conclusions that he drew is that there's always going to be trouble in the world, that trouble is part of life. Jesus even said so. He said, in this world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. So he promises that there will be trouble. Verse 9 says, who does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. And the point I tried to drive home last week is that the only way we're going to succeed in life is if we understand that life is seasonal. And we understand that seasons are not designed to stay forever. Seasons are designed to come and to lead into other seasons. Okay? Some seasons of life are much more difficult than other seasons to go through. And so we can't look at life as if what we're experiencing in the moment is going to be the rest of our lives. Okay? And I don't know about you, but this brings great hope to me. In fact, we need to look at it as if the difficult things are actually what are plowing the ground for the good things to come. Now let me say that is not automatic, though. It's not automatic. Sometimes people suffer needlessly. And it's because they don't understand how to cooperate with what God's doing. Are you listening? The Bible is full of promises, but those promises only come to pass, number one, if you know what they are. Number two, if you know how the system works. And number three, if you do what you need to do in order to work in the system. And that's why the Bible talks so much, especially in the book of Proverbs, about wisdom and understanding and knowledge. Because we need to learn how God's system works, and we need to learn how to get in that system and cooperate with it. Because around us, circumstances are happening daily, and the choices that you make about those circumstances are dictating your tomorrow. And have been your whole life. So we need to get wisdom. Okay, wisdom and understanding. First of all, understanding how does God's system work? Secondly, okay, what am I supposed to do in this moment of my life? That's wisdom. How do I apply the knowledge that God has given me in this circumstance, in this situation, so that I advance through it? And that's where life comes from. Okay? So Job knew these things. And the one conclusion he came to at the end of the chapter, or at the end of the verse, this passage here, and I love this, is that he catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the cunning comes quickly upon them. While we are suffering, in these seasons of suffering, while we're going through these things, there will be other people who are just evil, just doing evil things. And it's going to appear that nothing bad ever happens to them. And every great man or woman of God has had this experience. David cried out. He said, God, here I am and I'm suffering and I'm in this cave and I'm drinking ditch water. And this is my paraphrased version. And I'm being chased by an evil, insane king who throws spears at me. And God, you gave me all these promises. And God, the wicked are out there prospering. And here I am running for my life. And then at the end of the psalm, he comes back and he says, and then I saw that the wicked are standing on slippery slopes. But just so we keep focus in these times, there will be times when things don't go the way you want them to go. There will be times when things go exactly opposite the way you want them to go. And that is the time to listen to the voice of God. It's the time to say, God, okay, you've taught me all these things. Here's one thing you can rest in. That if God is allowing you to go through it, He's equipped you for it. That's what the Bible means when He says He won't give you anything more than what you're able to handle. It means that if He's allowing you to go through a situation of life, He has already provided the things that you need in order to succeed through that season. Okay? So those need to be times when we just slow down and we listen and we say, okay, God, where are you? What are you doing? What is going on here? How do I apply the things that you've taught me? All right? So step 8 is all about commitment. Now, I just want to talk about just a few more aspects of commitment, and this one's really important to me. The moral of the story is that if you leave your seed in the ground and you tend to your field, your harvest will come. Have you guys ever known somebody that goes to church once or twice, gets a couple Bible verses, gets excited about it, thinks that now life is going to change, and all of a sudden difficult times come. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this stuff doesn't work. Where's God when I need Him? Blah, 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 blah. Think of that like a farmer who puts his seed in the ground and then says, man, that didn't grow quick enough. I'm going to dig that up. I'm going to take it over here, and I'm going to put it in this church. Oh, I don't like the way things are going at this church. I'm going to dig it up, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to try a home thing for a while. See, the seed will only grow to its harvest if it's left in the soil and if it's tended to. Okay? There's a lot involved in the tending process. But the moral of the story here is that those who persevere, which is going to be the next step, those that persevere are the ones that are going to be rewarded. It was interesting. I had two situations this week. One of them, I got an email from somebody who used to go to this church a long time ago. And I won't go into all the details, and most of you people in the room know who the person is, but it's just, the email was to the effect that, I know I don't see you anymore, blah, 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 but I have great admiration and respect for you, blah, 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 blah. Don't know why I'm sending this to you, blah, 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 but I think God's telling me to do it. Been thinking about it for a month. Don't understand why I'm sending you this email because I know you just bought a new church, blah, 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 blah. But I think you should take your church and fold it into a bigger church and call it quits. Blah, 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 blah. And this was, it was a message from God. Actually, to be honest, the person said, I'm not sure whether God's saying this or not. And I think they had pure intentions in sending it. Apparently the way the email was worded, they wrestled for a whole month whether they should send it or not. Just figured, I'd rather send it and be wrong than not send it at all. So, I get the email. But to me, it felt a little bit like Nehemiah when he's rebuilding the walls. And all the different ways that the enemy tried to come in and tried to get him to stop the work. And the bottom line that I've come to is I look at the fruit in this person's life who's sending this to me, and I see a person who has not stuck with anything, who has bounced from one church to another, to another, to another, who has made statements in the fellowship about how I'm called to be here, God wants me to be here, blah, 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 blah. And yet, as soon as things get a little uncomfortable, uproot themselves and go somewhere else. I had another encounter with another person this week who I ran into. And again, I have to be vague here because you guys know who the person is. But ran into a person I haven't seen in a number of years and just, you know what a tumbleweed looks like? Again, I'm being purposely vague here because I'm trying to be kind. But I see a person who is like a tumbleweed.